Hello, BookTube. Right, we're going to try this. I know already that the ergonomics of this setup are not sufficient. I have a platform for the camera, and I have one other platform plus the chair I'm sitting on. And I know that as just a bare minimum, I need 50 or 60 platforms. Otherwise, things are going to fall onto the floor, and I'm going to have to do one of these, the classic YouTube move and whatnot. I know already that that is true, but I'm going to press ahead because I don't have any other platforms. I just have the one thing, so we'll take it slow. I've got some new releases that I want to show you. I want to make sure you know about them, that you know they're coming up, just in case they interest you as much or even more than they interest me. So we're gonna try to do this ergonomically speaking, even though we're ergonomically challenged. Oh, I just noticed there's a shelf here to the side that may work. Okay, all right, well, let's give this a try. So the first, we just got a few books to do. The first is YA coming out next year. This is by Brian Zepka. I believe it's his debut, and it's called The Temperature of Me and You. This is one for the gays. You got to give the gays something, or they get restless. So let's see what we have here. I believe this is his debut. Yes, this is his first novel, and this comes out in late January of 2022. Otherwise known here in Boston as shirt sleeve weather. You'd still be perfectly comfortable to wear shirt sleeves in Boston. It won't be as comfortable as it is today. Like, for instance, is boiling hot, mid-80s Fahrenheit with 97% humidity. In the middle of July, a day like today, the bubble-headed bleach blondes on cable news would have said, it's going to be a really bad one out there today. Be sure you have plenty of water. And we're in the middle of October, which our great-grandparents knew as a chilly month here in New England. But anyway, that didn't take long, did it? This comes out in late January. The only point that I was making about late January is that the daytime highs in late January are going to be in the 60s to 70s Fahrenheit. So what have we got here? Dylan has always wanted a boyfriend, but in the suburbs surrounding Philadelphia do not have a lot in the way of options. Then in walks Jordan, a completely normal and undeniably cute boy who happens to run at a cool 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And in walks refers to the Dairy Queen type place where Dylan works. His boss is usually absent. Dylan works there while he's at school, and there are no customers when you're working at a kind of a Dairy Queen or an ice cream shop in the middle of winter in a suburb of Philadelphia. Again, this is a dated reference because Philadelphia is also going to be boiling hot this winter, so you will have customers in the middle of what used to be known as a cold season. And that 100 degrees Fahrenheit refers to the cute boy Jordan. Is that his name? Are you going to tell me that Jordan, yes. The cute boy Jordan, the 110 degrees refers to his body temperature. When the boys start spending time together, Dylan begins feeling all kinds of ways, and when he spikes a fever for 2 weeks and is suddenly coughing flames, he thinks he might be suffering from something more than just a crush. Jordan forces Dylan to keep his symptoms a secret, but as pressure mounts and Dylan becomes distant with his closest friends and family, he pushes Jordan for answers. Jordan's revelations about why he's like this, where he came from, and who's after him leave Dylan realizing how much first love is truly out of this world. But if the attraction between them defies the laws of physics, love may be the only thing that can keep Jordan and Dylan together. And if I were close-minded, socially vengeful, far-left progressive ideologue, I would be happy about this book for its representation. Because I actually do have a higher than normal body temperature. I am not 98.6 degrees like most humans are. There's a small subset of humans that have a higher, or in some cases a lower, body temperature by a couple of degrees. It's not anything earth-shattering, but my normal body temperature you would consider a small fever in your own body, which is why I was very happy to go through the rigmarole of getting my vaccinations, my first and second vaccination here in Boston, the COVID vaccination, I had to go through quite a bit of rigmarole. Those things they were run by the military. They were totally administered by the military here in this country. So the military does this sort of thing really, really well, and they do it really, really well by making sure that there are no burps in the system. There are no kinks in the line. They make things smooth. There was no way for even an idiot masshole to get any of the procedures wrong in the testing sessions. It's actually kind of admirable in a frightening kind of way. And I had to lay the groundwork. I had to make sure I had all my paperwork ready for the inevitable. You aren't allowed to do anything. You aren't allowed to do anything like that if you're running a fever. And the same. I was very happy to have vaccination papers, because those handheld temperature guns that used to be used in 2020 in so many different places, they're just bloody awful for me. they're going to go bloop 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 bloop. But if I were a socially vengeful Twitter scold, I would say it's about time. But of course, you could tell from that pub sheet that Jordan is not going to be human. He's going to end up being an alien. 110 degrees is a little excessive anyway. That's a serious problem. So we shall see. We shall see what this does. You've got some slightly sci-fi tinged YA gay romance for the new year. This next one is also for the new year. Probably it will occasion less in the way of rants. This is by it's edited by Ann Snyder and Susanna Black, and it's called Breaking Ground: Charting Our Future in a Pandemic Year. And as you can see in these bright numbers, this comes out in next year, also in January. And this is, from what I was able to gather, a humanist Christian, a series of essays and reactions, diary entries, that sort of thing, of a humanist Christian reaction to all the different stressors of the COVID year, from isolation to misinformation to religious hostility, all kinds of things like that. Sounds fascinating. A public health and economic crisis provoked by COVID-19, a social crisis cracked open by the filmed murder of George Floyd, a leadership crisis laid bare as the gravity of a global pandemic met a country suffocating in political polarization and idolatry. In the spring of 2020, Comment and Plow magazines created a joint publishing project that would tap the resources of Christian humanist tradition to respond collaboratively and imaginatively to these crises. This volume, written in real time during a year that revealed the depths of our society's fissures, provides a wealth of proposals and reflections on what should come after, how we can truly renew our civilization. I don't quite know what to make of that description, but it's possible that this could be an intelligently hopeful COVID book, which would make it an extreme rarity. But it doesn't come out until next year. I just wanted you to know. I want you to know that it's on your radar. Whereas I think all the rest of these come out this year. This next one is... oh, good Lord. It's full of paperwork. Okay, we don't want that. This next one is a Lincoln book. And by a pretty interesting... with a pretty interesting take to it. It's by Noah Feldman, and it's called The Broken Constitution. I have read Noah Feldman. I read his book on James Madison, and I reviewed it. And this is his book on Lincoln and Lincoln's relationship with the United States Constitution, which isn't quite as straightforward as you might think if you only know Lincoln in thumbnail gestures from school. Although Abraham Lincoln came to power believing that the federal government had no legal authority to end slavery in states where it existed, during his time as president, he changed his mind and effectively rewrote the Constitution's place in the American system. The image of Lincoln as a brilliant mind and one of our country's greatest leaders is cemented in our national consciousness, but constitutional scholar and public intellectual Noah Feldman goes further to paint a portrait of a man who was one of the most influential constitutional thinkers in our history, and the most influential of all when it came to reading to a constitution in crisis. The Broken Constitution, this book, deals with Lincoln's journey towards an understanding that the United States could not continue without the abolition of slavery unless he ruptured its founding compact. Feldman begins with the famous story of Lincoln poised to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, worried that his tired hand would create a tremulous signature and cause Americans to believe he hesitated on the most important moral issue of his presidency, The story has come to be understood as a reflection of Lincoln's wish to reassure others that he acted decisively to create a new world order. Yet the author argues that Lincoln's bravado in that moment also served another purpose, to reassure the man himself, on the cusp of contradicting the position he'd held about slavery for the previous 30 years of his public life. That kind of thing is fascinating to me, and I largely like this author's James Madison book. I had a couple of quibbles with it only. And this thing comes out on November 2nd. So just 2 hot weeks from now, this comes out in bookstores. The Broken Constitution, which it has a chance anyway of being a Lincoln book that's actually interesting, which is, again, a real rarity. Then we have some fiction. This is not YA fiction. This is Clancy-esque thrillers, for those of you who like your Clancy-esque thrillers. This is, I think, book 2 of the Snake Eater Chronicles by James stdonoghue. This is Appointment in Tehran. What have we got here? We've got some paperwork. We need all this paperwork. What have we got here? Oh, goodness gracious. All right, well, the only real... okay, I believe the first one of these was a question of time was the first one of these. So this is only number 2. But this does not appear to give me any information, just a bunch of blurbs. So this came out on September 27th. So it's been out for a bit now. The book will surely tell me. Yes, there we go. Okay. Let's see here. This radical Iranian student seize the U.S. Embassy compound in Tehran and take over 50 diplomats hostage. The president tries to negotiate with a government that wants only to humiliate the United States. When talks fail, the president must turn to the military to bring Americans home by force. As preparations are made for an audacious rescue, an American intelligence officer hides alone in a Tehran safe house with a secret. He is protecting a powerful weapon known as the Percy's device, which is now at risk of being captured and employed against the United States. The agency director orders that it must be brought out at all costs. But as a small American team clandestinely enters Tehran to lead the way for the rescue force, a traitor spills the secret, and the KGB operatives begin their own search for the weapon. At the last minute, one more American is added to the advance team. His sole mission is to get the agency officer and the Percy's device to safety. So this is, I believe, the gimmick here is that the author himself has a great deal of covert operation experience. Is that right? Historian and writer James stdonoghue collected interesting stories during 35 years of active service with the U.S. Army Special Forces and the CIA in hot and not so hot spots overseas. Okay, so this is the second book in the series, and he brings a huge amount, presumably a huge amount of first-hand experience to the idea of this kind of a thing, whereas a lot of thriller writers tend not to do that. I don't know how much of a difference it will make. I think the important point here will be the narrative, which you don't learn in the CIA. but we shall see. I could swear that I read A Question of Time, the first book in this series. I could swear that I did. I'll have to check my journal to see. But as I've said many times on this channel, the follow-up book should be able to stand on its own. If it doesn't, it's the author's fault, not mine, for not remembering the first one. Unless it's a cliffhanger ending, unless the things are basically something like The Lord of the Rings that was written as one book and traditionally split up into 3. But if you're writing a second adventure of your main character, then it should stand on its own. And that, I guess, that reasoning will also apply to the last book that we're going to look at today, since it is technically also a volume 2 in a series. This is John McManus, and this is Island Infernos. This is the second volume in his series of books about the Pacific War during World War II, the Pacific theater of World War II, and specifically the slog of it all. Fire and Fortitude was his first book, and this big thing is his second book about U.S. forces island hopping and acclimating themselves not only to a new kind of warfare, but for most of them to a totally new terrain, a terrain that was as hostile as the enemy. Do I have a... Yeah, I do. I have a wee description for you here. Let's see what we have here. For you World War II fans, this is coming out in early November, November 9th. So 3 hot hot weeks from now. Let's see. The author's award-winning fire and fortitude enthralled readers with an unforgettable and authoritative account of the U.S. Army's evolution during the Pacific War, from the devastation of Pearl Harbor to the bloody battle from Macon Island in 1943. Now, in the second installment of what is going to be a 3-volume series, the author entrenches readers once again in the violent, complicated, and heroic chaos of the Pacific War, zeroing in on the trials and tribulations that the Army and other military branches mired in the conflict faced in the seemingly endless sprawl of 1944. And for readers diving into McManus's work for the first time, Island Infernos can easily be read as a standalone window into one of the most pivotal years in the war. Okay, well, we shall see. I certainly hope so. I could swear that I reviewed Fire and Fortitude. I could swear that I did, but I don't... well, you've got James Holland and Richard Overy. Against the likes of them, I'm not going to be blurbed anyway. I could swear that I wrote about it, but maybe not. But anyway, this comes out in the early part of November. Big military history. So that is it. Those are some new arrivals for you. We have Island Infernos, about the Pacific War, the slog of island hopping. It's been written about by some great military historians, but the Fire and Fortitude is quite good, so this might be as well. Then we have Appointment in Tehran, a thriller set during the Iranian hostage crisis. Then we have The Broken Constitution by Noah Feldman. Some of you might remember his Madison book. This is all about how Lincoln reconciled his new abolitionist beliefs with suddenly having the power to do that if you set aside certain key parts of the Constitution that you've been championing for your whole public life. Not an aspect of Lincoln or his presidency that I've ever seen have a whole book devoted to it. So then Breaking Ground, a Christian humanist perspective on our COVID experience. And finally, The Temperature of Me and You, a YA novel about a lonely kid in the suburbs of Philadelphia who meets a young stranger who is quite literally hot. So there you go. Some new releases for you to jot down if they're of any interest. I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.